All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 25 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are joined here and beyond blessed to have MLB.com New York Mets beats writer Anthony DiComo. Anthony, how are you? How have you been? And how are things in quarantine? How's the family?
I'm good, Joey. Thanks. That's a very nice introduction. Things are good. Things are good. You know, it was interesting at first, kind of going through everything. I think no one really expected or knew what to expect, but as time went on, I can say I got the most out of quarantine, and I'm happy that baseball is coming back now because I missed it. I missed doing my job. Not that I wasn't busy and working and all that in March, April, May, but it was different. And I like covering baseball. I like going out there and watching games. So I'm happy to be getting back to that now.
And now the new normal, Anthony, is going to be kicking in. We can only imagine what the new normal is going to look like. We were actually just speaking with your counterpart from the Philadelphia Phillies, Matt Gelb, just a few, I believe on Thursday, if I get my days right. Yeah, Thursday. And every day obviously seems like a Thursday or a Monday these days. But you know, we were speaking to him about what the new normal is going to look like. And, we'll go a little bit out of order here. We'll get to, a little bit more who Anthony DiComo is and how you got to where you are today. But I have to ask the almost the elephant in the room. But what do you believe the new normal is going to look like for you as a writer, especially with the possibility of Citi Field, might be close to the media?
Yeah, I guess I have to, explain the old normal before the new normal. The old normal is that, as a baseball writer, it's the best sport to cover from a journalistic standpoint because our access is so good and has historically been so good throughout the years. We get to know the players on a level that you just don't get covering the NFL or the NBA. Or the NHL, it's just different. There's more time in spring training. There's more time during the season before games. The pace of baseball has something to do with that, but also writers over the years have lobbied and argued for our access, and it's done us a great service, and in turn, that's done readers a great service because they get to know players in a way that you just can't in other sports. So it's something that I've taken advantage of throughout my career. It's something that I think any good writer takes advantage of. And it's something that's going to be challenged this year because we're not getting that. We're not getting in-person access. We're getting Zoom access. It's going to be no different than you and I talking right now. And certainly that's understandable given what's going on in the world. But it's also something that's going to take, some getting used to. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Talking to players after games this way versus going up to their locker and talking to them that way. It's going to be a different experience. In a way, I'm intrigued to see how it all works, how it all goes down. I will be at Citi Field covering games there for as long as it's allowed. I don't think I'll be going on the road. Seasons past, that would be an automatic going on the road. So it'll be different, and I'm interested to explore it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very, very weird for sure to see what the new normal is going to look like. And for some, we know obviously in Florida, Arizona, the coronavirus cases have spiked. So it's probably better off that you stay here at Citi Field and stay right where you are now to write your stories. But let's go back all the way to the beginning and to where things started for you. You went to BU, Boston University, class of 2007. You graduated Bachelor of Science Print Journalism. Talk about your journey to MLB.com. And did you want to write all your life? Obviously, with print journalism being that, I think I answered my own question, but give us a little bit of background there.
Yeah, someone's found my LinkedIn profile. And yeah. I apologize. I had a little something in my eye. I think we're good now. But
it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, I for as long as I kind of understood what this profession was, I think I had an interest in it. I was kind of the classic story of the kid who grew up in as far back as I can remember, spreading out the newspaper on my kitchen table and just devouring the sports section. For me, I grew up outside Boston. It was the Boston Globe, and I would just read that to cover to cover every single day, right down to the agate on the back page, and what high school teams were beating what high school teams in lacrosse, so, whatever it might be, I would read every single word. So by the time I got to high school, I was certainly interested in that. I joined the school paper there, liked it. Got to college, kind of was interested in that, joined the school paper there, loved it. And it just kind of evolved from there. One of the things I get college kids all the time will kind of get into my DMs and ask me if I have any advice for young aspiring writers and this and that. And I always say, you have to get out there and do it. You have to, take the extra steps that other people wouldn't. And I usually tell a couple of stories. One is I took a sports journalism class in college. It was the greatest professor I ever had. His name was Jack Fallow, a former Sports Illustrated writer teaching at Boston University. And he taught us kind of the ropes of how to be a sports writer. But more than that, his whole thing was he wanted to get as many kids jobs as he could. And he was always bringing us different job offers. And one day he came in and said, do you want to, this is to the whole class, not to me, do you want to work for the Boston Globe? I can get you a foot in the door. You can, go there, you'll answer phone calls, you'll do this and that. Maybe there'd be a chance to write down the line. Here's the catch. You have to work Friday and Saturday nights at like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I thought everyone was going to be clamoring for this opportunity. It turns out I was the only one in the entire class, a sports journalism class, who took him up on it. And I couldn't believe it. And look, when you're a college kid, I get it. Giving up your weekend nights is no small thing. You only get that once in a lifetime. But for me, I was so focused, so laser focused on wanting to do this that it was a no-brainer, and I couldn't understand why more people didn't take him up on that. So it was things like that. It was literally calling up sports editors from newspapers out of the area. I remember once the Chicago Fire, MLS, were playing the New England Revolution in a playoff game, and I called every Chicago sports desk asking if they needed a stringer to help them out. I was willing to do it for free. It's things like that. All of a sudden you have this collection of bylines, this collection of clips. You have a longer resume than another college kid who just worked for their student newspaper, because at the end of the day, every college sports writer, who wants to go far in this business worked for the student newspaper, was probably the sports editor at the student newspaper. You have to find a way to separate yourself. And I'm glad I did, because I stumbled into an MLB.com internship and I haven't left. I love the company. I love the idea of being on a beat. I've been on a beat since 2010 now, covering the Mets, and I always enjoy it. I say it doesn't feel like work, because every day I get up and I enjoy watching baseball, going to the stadium. It's a great job for me.
Yeah, and right after or right before your time at MLB.com, you worked with, and again, I did get a look at your LinkedIn profile, MetroWest Daily News. You were a sports correspondent for 9 months, January to September of 2006. Talk about how that eventually, I guess that was like right in the middle of your college career and MLB.com.
Yeah, that was when I was still in college. Another great job. Whereas the Boston Globe was kind of a great line on my resume, and really one of the most fun jobs I've ever had, getting to interact with the real life writers there, Dan Shaughnessy, Bob Ryan, the editing staff there, which was world class. That was cool, but I didn't get to write all that often. The MetroWest Daily News gave me an opportunity to write, and it was such a great place for a young sports journalist, because I would drive all around suburban Massachusetts covering baseball games, volleyball games, lacrosse, you name it. I was there covering it. And it wasn't just a 100-word blurb in a newspaper. I was getting to write 800, 900-word game stories about these things. And it was really, really cool. You really learn how to report, because you have to be there. You have to find the coach, you have to find the players, you have to keep track of the stats yourself, you have to do all these things, frankly, things that I don't have to do today in my professional life when I have so many tools around me to kind of help out. So you really kind of cut your teeth in a great way, and getting to write, getting to make mistakes, getting to just kind of learn the industry inside and out. Such a great job. I would recommend any aspiring journalist to try and work for their local paper, because you'll get to do things that you just wouldn't get to do other places. Yeah.
And just to be able to, again, with the sacrifice of the Fridays and the Saturday nights as a college student, because as you said, you were the only one in that sports journalism class to basically get up and go to the Boston Globe. That really is remarkable, because you have so many people that would go for that job in a matter of seconds, and everyone just sat back like this, and
Right.
you took full advantage of it. And obviously now they're all kicking themselves saying, yeah, I remember that guy, Anthony DiComo. Now he's covering a beat and he's traveling with the Mets. It's absolutely surreal that happened. And we'll get to the fact of the matter is also you are going to be an author in just a few, well, actually not you are going to be, you are an author. The book comes out, I believe October, that is, or in that range.
Yeah, October 13th.
October 13th, The Captain, a memoir, David Wright and Anthony DiComo. Really good stuff. We'll get to that in a second, but you are also the chairman of the Baseball Writers Association of America, New York chapter. Talk about what goes into that in addition to your Mets beat and how difficult that is. Is there like a dinner that you have to get prepared for, that you have to set up, especially with you being the chairman? You are the person that runs it.
Yeah, well, I was talking earlier about how the access in covering baseball is so great. A big part of that is the Baseball Writers Association of America, which has been around for, I believe, over 100 years, and certainly over 100 years, because we've been holding a New York chapter dinner for, I believe, 96 years now. So being chairman of the local chapter is kind of twofold. One, and this is the case in any chapter around the country, whether that's New York, Boston, Los Angeles, whatever, you're there to kind of make sure the access protocols that have been negotiated between the BBWAA and Major League Baseball are enforced. The main point of the organization is to make sure that sports writers who cover baseball have uniform access across the league, get access to these guys, get everything that we need to make the content great. In New York, it's pretty unique because we're kind of the focal point of the entire organization in that we've always held this annual dinner, and that's where you give out the MVP award, the Cy Young. Like last year, we had Mike Trout, Jacob deGrom, all these guys showing up, and it's a really cool event, and it's really traditional in that the chairman of the chapter gets to MC that event. So I've gotten to do that the past 2 years. I'll be handing it off to actually MLB.com's Yankees writer Brian Hoke next year. But it's just an absolute career highlight getting to stand on that dais, MC the night, call up these baseball legends, Hall of Famers, both guys that I cover and guys that I don't cover, getting to know guys. It's just a really awesome event. It's far more than just a line on a LinkedIn page. It really is. It has been a career highlight for me, and I'm so glad that I did it.
Yeah, and especially because, as you said, it's more than just a highlight on your LinkedIn page. When you heard that you were named, how does it work? You were obviously named chairman, but then the moment that happened, or however it happened, what was the feeling like for you saying that, wow, especially because the New York chapter, as you said, is the focal point of this association, with it being the focal point, the Mount Rushmore of the Writers Association and in the country, and you, Anthony DiComo, are the chairperson. How does that feel to you?
I think my first thought was, oh boy, this is going to be a lot of work. No, I had a little bit of a lead in. We have in New York, we have a vice chairmanship and then a chairmanship, and typically the vice chairman becomes the chairman. So for 2 years, I was kind of in that role. I knew it was going to happen. So, it's a good system because I was able to see our previous chairman, a good friend of mine, Mark Carrig, who works for The Athletic now. Yeah. He was chairman for 2 years, and I was able to see how he went about the process, both of dealing with the Yankees and Mets on access issues, but also doing the dinner, which is just a huge amount of time goes into it. It's not just the dinner itself, but it's advertising. It's working with our dinner director on seating assignments, making sure that working with teams and agents on making sure that the players are going to show up. And there are so many things that go into it before just showing up with the script and going through it. So a ton of work. It's the type of thing where every chairman has always said 2 years is enough. As much as I loved doing the dinner for 2 years, I'm happy to hand it off to someone else. I'm super glad I did it. I'll let Brian Hoke do all the work this year, and but I'll stay involved and I'll help out in any way I can. It's like I said, it's a fantastic event, and one of the coolest things I should mention about it is that it's open to the public. It's not cheap. It's a big ticket dinner, but if you have the means to attend, I would highly recommend it. It's just a unbelievable event for baseball fans. You see these guys outside of uniform, outside of the context of Major League Baseball stadium, and you get much more of their personality than you ever do during the regular season. So I'd highly recommend it for fans who have an interest in baseball, especially in New York. There's always Yankees and Mets in attendance to check it out next year.
Yeah, I may have to save up a couple of pennies in my piggy bank and get there next year. That would be, well, if obviously, again, we don't know what the whole deal will be, what the new normal will be in any venue, whether it be dinners or stadiums. So now, obviously, baseball is back. 60-game season. As we said in the open, coronavirus is beginning to spike in the southern states, Arizona, Florida, predominant southern teams. Marlins, Rays, D-backs. You got even in Texas, the Rangers, the Astros. Now, let's hear a little bit about what you would think for this upcoming season, because the universal designated hitter is coming to baseball, and the National League we will not be seeing pitchers bat for the first time ever. Your thought on how the Mets benefit from this extremely?
Yeah, I think it's a big benefit for the Mets, more than maybe any other National League team. They've got a guy in their organization who I'm sure most baseball fans have heard of, Yoenis Cespedes, who hasn't played in 2 years. Not really sure if he's capable of playing the field at this point. We'll see when the team gets together later this week. But I think the assumption is that even if he can play the field, he can't do it every day. So to have a guy like that who has the track record of being an all-star caliber hitter, a 30-plus home run hitter, all of a sudden you can insert him at DH, whereas you might not have otherwise been able to use him. That's a big benefit coming your way. So I think the Mets are uniquely suited just because of Yoenis Cespedes. And not only because of Yoenis Cespedes, they also have a guy on their bench named Dominic Smith who wouldn't really sniff much playing time otherwise, because Pete Alonso is entrenched at first base now. Not really a spot for Dom Smith. He can get at bats at DH, or Pete Alonso can get at bats at DH, and it'll give Dom Smith some reps at first base. So there are multiple ways the Mets can go with this. I think they'll use it on those guys. They'll use it on older players like Robinson Cano. They'll use it on maybe a JD Davis, who's a good bat and not as good of a glove. They can use this DH to their benefit because they have more than 8 quality hitters. Not a lot of National League teams do, or a lot of National League teams, I should say, don't have 8 quality hitters. So I think it's a big boon for them. Someone was asking me the other day, does it cancel out the fact that they lost Noah Syndergaard to Tommy John surgery? Probably not. I'll always take the pitching, and Noah Syndergaard was a big loss for this team. But having that DH certainly helps the Mets.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I've said countless times to a few friends of mine that, who benefits most from it if this happens. And I said the Mets easily because of Robinson Cano. And if Cespedes can stay healthy, really, really good stuff, especially also on paper, their roster is playoff worthy, when you look at it, and especially Rick Porcello too. If you get him on a good year, boy, he can really be something. So now going backwards, obviously, I'm assuming you've seen The Last Dance, where we go from here all the way back here. So we'll go there for a quick second. But when you started off at MLB.com, you started in 2007. Is that right? And also, you started 2007. And then you were eventually promoted to Mets beat writer. Now you started off as you said, an intern / reporter type thing. Talk about the beginning of your MLB.com career that eventually, elaborated into your life now.
Yeah, MLB.com had just a fantastic internship program where they would take 30 college kids every year and they would assign them to a team. And essentially you would, for an entire summer, shadow a beat writer. So it was an experience that you really just couldn't get most places. And I was living in Boston. I was going to Boston University at the time. I actually realized that if I got this internship, I had enough credits that I could actually technically graduate a semester early. So I did that basically so that I could move down to New York. I had 3 preferences. My first preference was in Boston because that's where I already lived. And then my numbers 2 and 3 were Yankees and Mets because that was the next closest place. And I was familiar with New York. I was actually born in New York. It made sense to me. I wound up not getting the Red Sox, not getting the Yankees, but I got the Mets. And it turned out to be the best possible thing. The Mets beat writer at the time for MLB.com was Marty Noble. Mets fans probably know him as a long-time Mets beat writer. Before MLB.com, he worked at Newsday for a long time. He was with the Bergen Record. He had almost 45 years in the business. He actually passed last year. But Marty became just an amazing mentor to me. He was getting on towards retirement age, and he didn't have a lot of patience for a lot of things. So he would often just tell me, "Oh, you write the notebook today. You write the game story today." And I was getting, much as we were talking earlier about the MetroWest Daily News and just getting to write and really cut my teeth, I was getting to do that all over again at a higher level at MLB.com, covering these baseball games, at a place where people were really reading in big numbers. So people were getting eyes on my stuff, and it was just a great situation, A, doing that, but B, seeing the way that Marty worked the clubhouse. He was one of the all-time greats I would say, in working a locker room, working a clubhouse, getting to know players, finding out information. And that was something, I think from a young age, I was always pretty good writer, reporter, maybe not so much. And I think that's one that never really came naturally to me. And I was worried as coming into the business that, am I going to be good enough reporting wise? I was confident in my writing, but am I going to be good enough reporting wise really to hack it, especially in the nation's biggest media market? And Marty was one of the guys that I looked to and learned from. And you look around in New York, and it's Joel Sherman, it's Jack Curry, it's all these guys who are just I could name a list 20, 30 deep. All these guys who are just titans of the industry. And I'm seeing the way they go about their jobs. I'm seeing what they do in the clubhouse, and then looking at the newspaper the next day and seeing what they wrote, what came of it. And through that, you kind of learn how to do the job on the fly. So it was just a great situation, that internship, because Marty was, in a spot where I think everyone knew he was going to retire pretty soon. They wound up keeping me on after the season at MLB.com. I did a little backing up Marty, backing up Yankees for a couple of years, and then when Marty was ready to go into kind of a semi-retirement in 2010, I took over the Mets beat, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah, and it's almost like when people look at their work the next day, it's almost like they self-critique. You figure, right? You want to see, obviously, to get better, and it's the same exact thing where you were talking about the reporting side of things, and we've seen you make appearances on SNY, we've seen you make appearances on MLB Network, so clearly you have you have what it takes to be on television. So could we see a possible a possible career path there, God forbid, if something comes along? Who knows? That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been funny doing this job, because another thing that I say to college kids a lot, or people interested in the industry, is that this job is so much more than it used to be. It's not just you go to the ballpark, you write a story or two, you come home. You have to be proficient now in social media, in multimedia. You have to be able to do things on TV, and especially that TV aspect. It was another thing that did not come naturally to me. I was not comfortable in front of cameras the first time I did it, or probably the first 50 times I did it. And just doing more and more reps, I think, helps a lot. I think I've gotten better at it. So with help from a lot of people along the way, could that be a full-time career for me? I love where I'm at. Truly, I love MLB.com. I would say that to you in confidence, even if we weren't on camera. I really do. So I think I'm probably going to stick it out here for a while. But even in that role, having those skills, being able to do TV things, and I love the people over at SNY as well. Some of them are some of my best friends in life now, beyond people that I work with. But having that skill, I think, helps me in a lot of ways. Being proficient on social media, as I said, I think helps me in a lot of ways. Any way that you can reach Mets fans as a Mets beat writer, whether that's through the print, through the written word, on TV, on social media, in person at events, any way that you can reach Mets fans, I think can only help. It can help increase your profile. Doing things like this is a great example. If I can reach one person that I wouldn't otherwise have done, it's a good thing for a beat writer. So it all kind of goes into that stew of what it takes to do the job well. And a lot of it are things that I kind of learned on the fly.
Yeah, everything. It's the experience that eventually really takes over for you. It's the experience. It's the people that you know as well. Now, going back to the baseball side of things, and really looking at this year as well. Not even this year, but even in years past, even back to 2010. You've been the Mets beat writer since then. Obviously, we've gone over that umpteen times. But now National League and American League cities. What would be, I would say, what's the, I don't know, your most favorite city to go to on the road, National League and then also American League for Interleague?
It's a tough question. My answer to this has changed and evolved many times. It's one of the most frequent questions that I get. If I have to pick one, I would probably pick Chicago for National League. It's just such a great vibe. The stadium itself doesn't have necessarily the best working conditions for reporters, but obviously anyone who's been to Wrigley Field knows what kind of a place that is to watch a ball game. It's the type of place where I go there for the 30th time and I feel like I have to whip out my cell phone and take a picture. It's just so cool. And then the city itself, especially, in the middle of summer, it's such a great place to be. So many great restaurants, so many great things to do in your downtime. So I love going to Chicago. As far as American League goes, I have a soft spot in my heart for Boston. I grew up in the area. I went to college in the area. I still have friends in the area. So I love going there. It's a biased answer, but it would be tough for me to put any place above Boston in my book.
Now, now with Chicago being your answer, I'm going to ask you this one: Chicago deep dish or New York style?
You know what? I hate the question, and I hate and here's why: because they're not comparable, and people act like you have to pick one or the other. You can enjoy both. Deep dish is a casserole, essentially, is what it is, and it's delicious. Obviously, New York pizza, thin crust, is delicious. I love them both. I refuse to choose. There
you go. I love that answer. That's fantastic. Now we actually heard from your Phillies counterpart, Matt Gelb. He told me following our interview off camera, he said, ask Anthony about his new scorebook that he came out with. So I'm going to ask you, Anthony, from Matt, this new scorebook, is this something like a competition with Bob Carpenter? What's the deal here?
It's really not. And Matt and I go back a long ways. Matt was actually, I believe, when I was an intern in 2007, or maybe it was the next year, he was an intern at the Star Ledger in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I got to know, I've known Matt for well over a decade now, and he's really does phenomenal work at The Athletic covering the Phillies. But yeah, no, this has been going on for more than, it's not new. It has been going on for maybe 6 or 7 years. I didn't love any of the scorebook options that were out there. There are a couple ones that you'll see sports writers use, and actually less and less these days, because very few baseball writers actually keep score by hand anymore, believe it or not. There are so many ways to do it online, or you don't even need to, because everything's automated to the second now. But for me, I still like doing it. I'm a traditionalist in that sense, but also it kind of keeps me engaged in the game every time a play happens to write it down. I just like doing it. But I wasn't happy with any of the scorebooks out there. Even Bob Carpenter, as you mentioned, he makes probably the best scorebook that's out there. But really, it's kind of geared toward radio folks, TV folks. It's huge. And if you want to carry 162 games in that thing, it weighs about 15 pounds. And if you're, my friends Howie Rose or Wayne Randazzo on the Mets radio, you can do that. But I don't like lugging that around from city to city. So I decided to make something a little more compact, but also with plenty of space to do what I wanted. Long story short, I got them printed up. And some of my writer brethren would look at it and be like, "Oh, that's pretty nice. Can I get one?" And all of a sudden, I look up and I'm printing up 15, 20 scorebooks for people and selling them. Not because I'm trying to make any money. I really didn't make any money off it, but because people wanted it. So I'm like, sure, spread the word, whatever. It's not that hard for me to do. So yeah, you'll see a couple DiComo scorebooks floating around the game. Like I said, not many people keep score, which is a shame. But those that do, if you ever want to take a look at my scorebook, Jordan Bastian, actually, my colleague who covers the Cubs in Chicago at MLB.com, he makes his own as well. And you'll find that there's a couple that crop up around the game. Those of us who do keep score are pretty militant about the things that we like and that we don't like in a good scorebook. So you'll find some good-natured arguments in the scorekeeping community.
So where can we find that? Where can we find that scorebook? Because honestly, I'm actually one that keeps score at home. Actually, yeah. So where can I, along with the fan brethren, if you will, find this?
Anyone who wants one, send me a DM on Twitter. My DMs are always open. I found it's a really good way to connect with fans. But I'd be happy to to print one up for people who are interested in a DiComo scorebook.
That's excellent. Well, expect one from me later on. So now, fast forwarding to March, March 12th, obviously March 11/12th, we know was the day basically the world stopped turning in the world of sports. As funny as I made that sound, it really is the truth. We all know what happened. Obviously, COVID. Yeah, we know. But now were you in Florida when all this happened? And what was it like hearing about it? And what were the feelings like for you that, this is now something serious? Obviously, we heard this a little bit back in February, but then now when it's, at your doorstep, what was the feeling like for you in Florida? And you weren't even home either.
Yeah, I was in Florida. I remember distinctly having read about COVID as far back as probably early January, reading the daily updates. And it always seemed so far away. Like this is, something that's going on in Asia, but it's not going to affect us over here. And as the weeks went by, it got more and more real. And I think like a lot of people, it kind of hit me full force that one night. I believe it was when Donovan Mitchell tested positive in the NBA, and it was like, oh wow, this is not only going to affect the USA, this is going to affect me personally in my job. The next thing we know, everything's getting shut down. I'm flying back home for I don't know what's going to happen. So it was quite a situation at first, just because obviously you're worried about people in your own life. You're worried about people that you don't know who are getting sick, who are dying from this thing. But there's also just so much uncertainty. Am I going to work this year? What's going to happen with baseball, with the industry? Are they going to play again? So many questions that I had popping into my head, knowing that no one out there had the answers to any of them. So it's so much just wait and see. And yeah, as the weeks went by, I became more and more optimistic that baseball would return. Even those days when the labor dispute between the league and the Players Association, there were some dark times where it looked like maybe things wouldn't happen. I tried to stay as optimistic as I could throughout. And here we are now talking on what is this, June 29th, and we're getting ready to go to spring training number 2 or summer camp or whatever you want to call it. I'm still optimistic. A lot of people, I've gotten so many messages like, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if they get through 60 games. And, I think while people are right to be cautious and right to, certainly have the right to be skeptical, I think I'm just an optimistic person in general. I'm hopeful that, players, staff, media, everyone will not even just fingers crossed, but that everyone will take the proper steps to ensure both their own safety and the safety of those around them. People will respect each other, wear masks when it's appropriate, socially distance whenever possible at these stadiums, and do the things that are needed to do to keep this thing running. Because if it has to get shut down because of the coronavirus, well, that's not a great situation for anyone, because A, it means we get no baseball, but B, more importantly, it means that the disease has come back in such a way that we're all kind of at risk and in danger again. And I don't think anyone wants that. So I just hope that people will be responsible and that we can, get through a season and have everyone be happy and have it work out, the best way possible.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Things, obviously, we don't know what everything is just one big question mark, going obviously from where you are in the media all the way down to the diamond with the players. Obviously, we just saw earlier today, Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross just called it off for them. And they said that, Ryan Zimmerman has family members that are high risk, so he's not going to take that chance. Can't blame him and can't blame the others that could potentially put themselves and their families at risk. Now we look at some of the possible asterisks, Anthony, and you look at the, so would a player hit, let's say 360 in 60 games, or a Hall of Fame vote, or just the World Series general statistics? What are your thoughts on the, he had a great season, but then when you look at it down the road, how does that affect all of the statistics? How does that affect, is this certain player a great player? How does this affect free agency, trades, etc.?
Yeah, my thoughts are we need to take this season for what it is. And if, let's say, the New York Mets win the World Series, that can't be poo-pooed just because it's a 60-game season. It's still a hell of an accomplishment. Let's say Jeff McNeil hits 410 over the course of a 60-game season. That can't be poo-pooed just because it was a 60-game season. It's still a hell of an accomplishment. Does that mean that Jeff McNeil, what he accomplished, is better than Ted Williams hitting 406? No, I think you need to look at everything through the lens of context and understand that what happens in a 60-game season is going to be different than a 162-game season. Is finishing in first place and winning a World Series in a 60-game season as impressive as doing it over 162 games? No, 162 games is harder. It's more difficult. It is the grind that defines baseball. But that doesn't mean that whoever wins the World Series this year didn't do something pretty special for their team, for their club. That doesn't mean that whoever wins the home run title and the batting title didn't do something pretty special. They just did it over a shorter period of time. And I think we can appreciate that, or I hope we can appreciate that with the nuance that it deserves, which is it's a good thing, it's an important thing, it's a special thing. It's not a 162-game season, and we can separate those two things. It's kind of like deep dish versus thin crust, right? They can both be good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's tough. It's weird. It's weird to think with this 60 game season that not only that baseball is going to begin, but it's going to be 60 games, and then we're going to see obviously the averages being higher and everything, and you're going to be hearing a lot of the outside chatter of, oh, this guy did better. This guy doesn't deserve to obtain a World Series ring, or this team, this random team, potentially the Mets, or even who knows? I don't know. I'll throw it out there. The Marlins. Wow, they won the World Series. Who would have thought that? That's it's definitely an accomplishment for sure. But as we get into the top of the ninth inning of our little conversation here, because summer is officially here now, we needed something to look forward to, Anthony. And obviously with the New York pause, shelter in place, quarantine, whatever we want to call it, we had nothing to look forward to except sitting inside. Now that we're able to, go back outside a little safer, if you will, what ice cream flavor are you really looking forward to having? And we've asked every single soul. You are now number 25, guest number 25. I'll give you a little hint here. Your counterpart, Matt Gelb, said his was cookie dough. There's a whole bunch more, but we'll get to that later. What is yours? And let's put that to the list.
You know what I'm looking forward to having again is the Lemon Ice King in Corona. I think a lot of Mets fans are familiar with it. It's right there, not far from the stadium. But they have about 50 flavors of Italian ice, and I love their chocolate chip Italian ice. It's like a vanilla ice with little mini chocolate chips, and it's just phenomenal. I think that might be my answer for ice cream as well, is chocolate chip. I mentioned earlier I'm kind of a traditionalist in a lot of ways. Ice cream is one of them. I don't need some kooky, crazy flavors. Just give me a high quality chocolate, vanilla, whatever. Chocolate chip is the perfect mix because you get a great high quality ice cream with creamy vanilla chocolate chips. There's not a lot that can beat it.
Chocolate chip. You and the Atlanta Hawks play-by-play man Bob Rathbun both have the same taste. Pretty cool stuff. So now let's keep moving along here. Now, obviously you were talking about, you have been answering some collegiate students, and their advice or anything. But now, because we've been sheltered inside, we've been told not to go anywhere. Now, obviously, as we said, things are slowly beginning to open up. But obviously back in April, April showers bring May flowers. Yes, but it was raining a lot. And there would be times when, being told to stay inside, it affects with your mental health. And with aspiring journalists, broadcasters, athletes, etc., the list goes on. What would be your advice to give to someone that says, okay, I'm stuck inside, I can't see a ball game, I've seen these reruns on SNY or MLB Network umpteen times, what do I do here? What does Anthony DiComo say to that person?
Read everything. And I don't mean just my articles on MLB.com. I mean, read books, read nonfiction, read fiction. It sounds like simple advice, but you'd be amazed how few people, especially younger people, do it these days. And it's so vitally important as a writer, because you'll pick up things that you don't even realize you're picking up. how to be a good writer, how to find your voice. Your voice tends to be an accumulation of all the people that you read in your life. It's not something that you can just manufacture. You can sit down and say, okay, this is going to be my writing style, my voice. No, it's something that happens naturally over years and years of reading. And it's almost like a lost art. And look, I'm guilty of it too. When I was in high school, I was the kid who barely read any of the books. I would pick up the Cliff's Notes, the Spark Notes of the books, and I didn't need to pass the test. So that's what I did. And I got to be probably in my mid-20s, and I hadn't really read many books in the last decade of my life. And I started getting into it again. And I realized, like, wow, why wasn't I doing this? So, a decade lost. But I just think it's so important for kids to do that, especially for people who want to be professional writers. If you're not reading, you're just not going to develop into the type of writer that you want to be or that you need to be to succeed. So do it. Pick up a newspaper, read it cover to cover. Read the news every day, read books, read fiction, read everything. This is the perfect time to do it. You're at home, go sit outside on the hammock, go sit outside on the deck, on the porch, whatever, and read. That's my advice.
Yeah, as obviously as negative as the news is now, left and right, we're seeing negative things in the unrest in America. It's obviously for some it's a little difficult, but I love the hard read that you gave there. That's
it's an easy thing to do. Everyone can do it. So
that's true. You're right. Now, because where you are now, obviously I'm assuming someone was there to push you. Who was your biggest inspiration in your life, and for you to get here? Who's your biggest inspiration?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a single person. There have been certainly a lot of people who have been influential in my career, starting with my parents, my sister. Talking about reading and writing, my sister kind of taught me before I was old enough to go to school. She would sit me down and we would read and write in notebooks that she had. So my family was always a big inspiration for that stuff. As I got older, I mentioned my professor in college, Jack Fallow, was just hugely helpful in so many ways. Marty Noble, who I talked about at length earlier, was hugely helpful in so many ways. There were too many people for me to list here, but you'll find that. And I think that's not unique to sports journalism or journalism. In any industry, you're going to have people who help you out along the way, key people who further your career, who give you that push, that advice that you need. And my advice would be listen to those people, because you never know which of those little internships or jobs is going to be the one that winds up being important. You never know which of those people that you meet along the way is going to be the one that's going to help you out when you need it the most. So just build that network. Even people who haven't necessarily helped me in my career are some of the best friends that I have, that I've gained out of this industry. So continue meeting people, continue listening, keep your ears open, all that stuff. And it's life is funny. You never know what's going to help.
That's true. And you never know who you're also going to run into as well, because again, this industry is all about who you know. Anthony DiComo, everybody, MLB.com, New York Mets beat writer, 843. Pretty good. Anthony, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And for those tomorrow that might want to tune in, Anthony knows this name pretty well. Scott Hairston will be on our show tomorrow night, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, June 30th. Follow us on Instagram at Observe Eastern. Anthony, once again, thank you so much for joining me here tonight.
Yeah, I covered Scott Hairston briefly. Very nice man. So you guys are in for a treat. Good talking to everyone.
Thanks so much, Anthony, again. And again, Anthony DiComo, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Anthony, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think here we go, 8:44. We're a minute shy.
We're good.
Good
I
stuff,
appreciate
man.
it.